Reform councillor Laila Cunningham tried her hand at defending Nigel Farage, and it was painful.
Why has the money that he received when he was politically active as the chairman of Reform but not elected, why was that not
Well, because he
declared?
wasn't an MP and he didn't need to declare it.
But he was politically active at the time.
No, I mean, being the chairman of a political party is like an honorary role. He was not politically active. And you know,
as the chairman of a political party?
Yeah, he was he was a social media influencer, and he was a GB News presenter. And that's
whilst also the leader of the chief executive of a political party.
Yeah, but he was not politically active. You know, there are loads of people that are staffed at Reform. I wouldn't call them all politically active.
Even though they work for a political party?
Hang on, Tom, we have people working here in the back office who work for a political party, but there is no way anyone would deem them to be politically active. You know, they're doing accounts. It's just there's a separation.
They're not knocking on doors. They're not handing out leaflets. They're not giving speeches.
They're not putting their name out there and asking people to vote for them.
But Nigel Farage, as leader of that organisation before he was an MP, was doing that. He was asking all of those things. He was saying vote Reform.
No, he was a social media influencer. He was a GB News supporter.
He was not. He was not publicly agitating for people to vote for Reform whilst the chairman of that organisation.
I haven't seen all his social media posts. I don't. You know, Nigel's convinced, and he's sure that he's sought legal advice. He has done nothing.
Yes. So but you would agree, if he had been advocating for Reform in that role, he would be being politically active in the way in which you're absolutely right. The person who's the accountant would not.
I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know the exact term of what politically active, and it seems to be quite subjective depending on who you're talking to.
Wow, that was so painful. Look, first of all, the idea that Nigel Farage isn't a politically active person, that's crazy. She's trying to say that Nigel Farage is like someone who does graphic design for a political party or does accounts. Like they're the same person. No, because these people are not on show. It's their job. Some people might do graphic design for a party and they can support them, right? But they're behind the scenes. Like, Nigel Farage has been a career politician. He was an MEP in the European Parliament. He has been a massive campaigner. He was leader of UKIP, leader of the Brexit Party, and chairman of Reform, saying, we need to vote Reform. And then, as we all expected, he took over Reform. So to say, well, at the time, he wasn't politically active is crazy. And then at the end, she goes, well, I guess we'll have different interpretations of politically active. Why say that? Why even bring it up? Like, you were the person that brought up politically active, and then Tom Squabrick says that makes no sense. So she's like, well, I guess we will have different definitions of it. Extremely painful. And this is someone who I thought, Laila Cunningham, was actually not bad in the media. That was terrible. Let's go to another video.
Security.
Are you saying a property empire?
Are you saying a property empire? Are you saying there's a problem with owning houses? Are we now a communist society where we cannot own houses?
No, but again, you're supposed to declare them. He didn't.
Well, again, is that a parliamentary standards finding?
Well, this is one of the things which Parliament's will be looking at, because this is the second thing. By the way, a couple of weeks ago we thought that.
So hang on, can we just go back? Can we just go back to you saying?
Now we've got the George cultural donation. Now we've got the property thing.
Can you just
Two new things he didn't declare.
That's fine. Can we
this
just
is
go
a subject of public interest. Journalists will ask questions in a free society.
Listen, as a politician myself, and I think people watching TV would want to know. I just want to clarify what you said. That it is a 200-year tradition to doorstep
investigative journalism. Absolutely.
To doorstep. Are you justifying then? To doorstep people's to publicise where people's children live. You're saying that's fine. But you accept that?
Sorry, this happens in every democracy.
Sorry, do you accept that?
I'm not quite sure what the problem is.
Do you accept that that is fine? You're saying that that's fine on your newspaper publishing a young girl's address who has nothing to do with politics. You're saying that's okay, are you?
We didn't publish a young girl's address.
Yes, you did.
No,
you published her house, which is very easy to find through AI now.
We didn't publish the address, really?
You published a photo.
I've no idea how old she is.
You published a photo, and you're accepting that that's
fine. In a feature exposing a property empire which had been concealed wrongly from the parliamentary authorities.
You said it was.
That's what investigative journalism is about.
No, ask as much as you want, but why do you not question the fact that since Labour Party came into power, they've given 138 million of government contracts to their donors? Somehow that intersection between money and politics doesn't cross your desk.
No,
it's not. No, I've never read a story about it.
Crypto-billionaires giving money under the carpet to politicians who do them favours, and has Reform not got the most pro-crypto manifesto of any party?
And so you think...
So what? Because crypto-billionaires are right, we're making Yuga. They're spending...
What's wrong with...
They're giving most of the money...
Okay. I wish I was there, because I could be like, look, I'm not from the media. I'm not from Reform. The media suck. They're owned by corporations. They're owned by billionaires. And guess what, Reform? They're owned by billionaires. They're owned by corporations. Both of you are doing my heading. This is what we need to do. We need to redistribute wealth. We need to tax the rich. We need to nationalize public industry. I'm sure Hannah Spencer wanted to say all that, but she was stuck in the middle. But this next video is such a vibe.
What did she address? Really?
You published a
I've no
photo
idea how
of it.
old she is. I'm
Well,
assuming
you published a photo, and you're accepting that that's
in
fine.
a feature exposing a property empire which had been concealed wrongly from the parliamentary authorities.
You said it was...
That's what investigative journalism is about.
No, because the priest said his daughter lived there. I'm just asking, Fraser, are you defending that?
Yes, it's a very good investigation.
So that's the time. So that's the.
Let me bring in.
We are all Hannah Spencer. I love how Victoria Derbyshire was like, let me bring in Hannah Spencer. And then the rest of the clip, she doesn't get to speak. Now, there have been lots of claims that Sky News harassed and hounded Farage's daughter. Farage released CCTV footage to prove this claim. I'm struggling to see where the harassment was. I mean, I guess I'm going to say that my delivery driver is harassing me because he came and knocked on the door. Now, Sky News responded to the video. Clarification, Sky News was not at the property at 7:41 a.m, as has already been acknowledged, and as shown in the footage from 10:19 a.m. Sky News was outside a property where Mr. Farage was registered to vote at the last election. Sky News did not interact with Mr. Farage's daughter. On a single occasion, we approached the property without a camera operator, identified ourselves as Sky News, and the adult occupant chose not to engage. We were seeking to contact Mr. Farage to ask questions about the gift he accepted from Mr. Cottrell. This is a well-established and routine journalistic practice when reporting on matters of legitimate public interest. The footage clearly demonstrates that Sky News did not hound or pursue Mr. Farage's daughter. At no stage do we seek to speak to anyone other than Mr. Farage in connection with the story. So there you go. Nigel Farage was registered at that house, so Sky News reporters believe that Farage would have lived there. Now, of course, he didn't, because he's got multiple houses, because he's a very wealthy man. But Sky News didn't know that, and that's why they went. But again, there was no harassment. There was a light knocking on the door. And as Helena mentioned earlier, right, I'll tell you what is harassment from journalists. Them camping out every single day in front of Jeremy Corbyn's front door. That was harassment. Now, as we know, a by-election has been called and no political party is standing. A challenger, though, has been announced. Count Binface. The other parties feel that this is a waste of time and money, and if Farage has been found to have broken parliamentary rules, it would trigger another by-election where presumably all parties would stand. Now, we don't have any constituency polling as of yet, but we have one from Nowcast based on national trends. And as you can see, Reform have 59.3% of the votes. The Conservatives, 17.3% in second place. Labour, 7.5%. The Greens, 6.8%. That is a mountain to climb. Now, speaking of by-elections, Michael Crick absolutely bodied Richard Tice on LBC.
This idea that the parties are running scared. Well, if Mr. Tice and Mr. Farage are so keen on elections, Why are they not going to have elections in Romford, where Andrew Rosendale defected from the Conservatives, or in Fareham and Waterlooville, where Suella Braverman defected from the Conservatives, or in Wiltshire, where Danny Kruger defected from the Conservatives? In UKIP's day, the last time there was a by-election in Clacton, it was because a gentleman called Douglas Carswell defected from the Conservatives and felt it was a matter of honour and principle that he should fight a by-election. There are no principles in this by-election. It's all about Farage and his ego. And what will happen is that none of the other parties, as you say, none of the other serious parties will fight it. It'll be just like the election caused by David Davis in Holton, Price and Howden in 2008, where he gave up his seat, gave up being Shadow Home Secretary, and the other parties boycotted the election, and it became a farce. And you know what? Those other parties who boycotted the election in Holton, Price and Howden because they all thought it was a stunt in 2008, you know what? They included a party called UKIP, led by a young man called Nigel Farage.
Completely silenced. It's not often you see Richard Tice silence, but Crick absolutely had him banged to rights. And it's true. Okay, I know that Reform and other parties have criticised the Labour Party because Andy Burnham isn't calling an election. I think that's a fair question, right? You know, yes, it was a by-election in Makerfield, but everyone knew he was going to be the next Prime Minister. And people were saying, you know, like, why not call an election? Okay, fine. But where was the by-election for Suella Braverman, Robert Jenrick, Andrea Jane, because I think she left and then came back, was now mayor actually, various other MPs who literally just switched party? Absolutely nothing then? Of course not. Helena, all parties standing down, is that a smart move? Like I've seen that you said that the Greens should stand, but it is unlikely that they're going to win.
I mean, the Greens they're not standing anymore. I was advocating before the by-election I was pretty sure that the Lib Dems, Labour and Tories were going to stand down regardless. Restore Britain standing down was interesting. Actually, I think the Rupert Lowe deciding that he wouldn't want to get involved and would... He literally tweeted out, it was quite funny. Restore Britain said that they won't be contesting this one, but they will be contesting the one after. Because I think even Rupert Lowe believes that Nigel Farage's potential misdeeds could lead to the suspension, that could lead to the recall petition that gets the by-election round 2 electric boogaloo in Clacton in however many months' time, which would be, you know, quite a farce already. But, okay, my point was that, okay, the Green Party, we're not there as an arm of the briefcase wing of the electorate. We're there because we want to campaign and we want to win. And whilst we may not win in Clacton, like no one's expecting us to win in Clacton, we did finish above Labour and the Liberal Democrats in every single local election ward in Clacton, right behind the Tories and Reform. So it's not like there are no Green voters in Clacton who want to vote for us, right? Like in my mind, as a Green Party voter, as a Green Party member, like we owe it to our voters to give them the choice to vote for us when there is the ability to do so. But clearly, tendering Green Party had different ideas to us, and I would have suggested campaigning solely on the idea of money in politics. And you know what? We're the only party that can do it. The Green Party are the only party that can campaign on money being taken out of politics, because Labour take big donations, Tories take big donations, Reform do, even the Lib Dems get donations from, like, Lord Sainsbury. And this could be a perfect platform to call out Christopher Hardbourne and George Cottrell, but also to call out Quadrature Capital and Frank Hester, call out Trevor Chin and Martin Taylor, the £700,000 from Labour Together, to show that actually we have continually had unclean hands involved in our politics for far too long, and that to be able to make our politics work for people again, it has to be paid for by people rather than paid for by oligarchs and billionaires. I understand why they've decided to stand down, and now that everyone has done, I can at least see the argument in making it the Farage versus Binface election, make it into a humiliation ritual for Nigel Farage, and indeed potentially, no, I don't think it will happen, have him be unseated by a man with a bin on his head, because that'll be, you know, whether he wins or not, it's not exactly going to be shining a positive light on Farage as a political figure if that's what he's going to reduce himself to in aid of a political stunt that he basically did, as far as I can see, to avoid all of the scrutiny being around the things that dropped today, which The Guardian had said that they were going to release and give him time to be able to respond to them before they went public with the allegations around the involvement of the National Crime Agency, for example, and other donations to do with reform. Because now all the media is talking about is the by-election rather than the donations, which actually is the important thing here. But whether or not it's Count Binface, whether or not it's nobody, whether or not the by-election happens or not, right, Nigel Farage still sucks up the air in the room. he still managed to make all of the news media talk about him as a person, right? That's not going away whether the Greens stand or whether they don't. That was my mind. Go, well, now we've got a time to get a national spotlight on us. We should use it to talk about something important which affects all of us. Obviously, we're very heavily tailored towards Nigel Farage and reform. Like, he doesn't want to talk about the donations. He doesn't want to talk about Sasan Gandhari. He doesn't want to talk about all of the different billionaires that donate to him. He doesn't want to talk about all of the stuff that's come out from the newspapers today. And, the Greens could have used this as a platform to scrutinise him over this stuff. Camp Binface may be able to do that himself, but the Greens certainly would have the eyes of the public upon them should they do so. But you know what? Whilst Camp Binface may be the darling of the Marina Hyde, Matt Ford spitting image, have I got news for you style era of politics, right? The kind of centrist dad, Robert Peston, Ian Hislop, Paul Merton kind of sphere of politics. Definitely the led by donkeys candidate at this election. Clearly a sphere of politics I do not belong to. It's clear that all the parties have now realised that the funniest outcome is Independence Day. And so, you know what? The people have spoken. Let's get Binface elected.
I agree. I'm not on the gravy train for Camp Binface. It's like centrist slop in it, as you said, centrist dad. Have I got news for you sort of stuff. I think you pose some really interesting points because obviously I know the Greens aren't standing, so it's just hypothetical now. But if the Greens did stand, like, there would be no noise from the Conservatives, Lib Dems, and Labour, and it can literally be, you want a people versus the establishment election? You got it. You've got Nigel Farage and Reform, who are the establishment, and we are willing to call out corporate donors. No, Labour can't do that because of quadrature capital and all that sort of stuff, right? And who's the guy who ran famously? John Caldwell and all the others, right? So they can't do that, and you'd be right. Like, the Greens can really highlight that platform, and that could do a lot for their national campaign. They wouldn't win, I don't think, but like, there would be a genuine choice. There will be like, okay, obviously we've got Farage, he's probably going to win, but hearing the Greens' anti-corporate party is really important. The flip side, though, is that I'm so desperate for this to be a humiliation ritual. And of course, even if the Greens stood and the other parties didn't, Farage could still kind of say, well, I won. There was a contest. They put up a candidate and I won. The people believed in me. The absence of any party, it is a complete and utter joke. And for me, as much as, I vote Green, I support the Greens, I think the number one thing right now is to try and dispose of Farage and is to try and make this such a humiliation event that the subsequent by-election will damage him. And even if he wins that one, he's going to be tarnished for longer because it's so important that reform is defeated. But I can see your point of view. It doesn't really matter now because the Greens aren't standing. So I guess we're all supporting Camp Binface.
The one point I would make as well is that lots of people think the Greens can't win in Clacton, and I think I would probably agree. But the reality is that in places like Clacton, in left-behind areas of this country, Green Party policy is what these places need. And in fact, because we've had so much of the media discourse around intra-party politics or personality politics rather than on policy, a unique opportunity to be able to talk about deindustrialization. Obviously, this is a town that lost a lot of its jobs because of cheap airline travel, meaning people would now holiday overseas, so all of the holiday revenue, the seasonal revenue of Clacton just died out. And now the average age of that town is incredibly high. A third of the population of Clacton are over 65, right? That's why it's so right-wing. Age is the biggest track in terms of political ideology in this country. And you know why it's so old? Every young person who's grown up there has left because there are no jobs. They've moved to London, they've moved to Bristol, they've moved to Manchester, they've moved all around the country for university, for work, for study, for love, whatever it might be. And they've all left Clacton behind because how do you plan a life? How do you build a family in these areas where there are basically no jobs? Because in a world of neoliberalism where the markets direct all capital, in a service economy, you'll go where all of the consumption is, which is in the big cities, right? So it's that demographic shift is part and parcel of the post-industrial north, the seaside towns of East Anglia and the southeast and the places in the southwest where there previous was international funding that now has gone and now there's basically nothing left in terms of overall funding. And state-directed jobs programs would be a way of being able to revitalise these areas and keep young people and keep families together. And that's the kind of politics that we support in the Green Party, as well as protecting the nature and the sanctity of areas which are currently being despoiled by private water companies pumping shit into the water. We're the only party with a plan to deal with these problems here in the Green Party. And so talking to the people who literally have to swim in the water on Clacton Beach, good opportunity. That's all I was saying, but it doesn't really matter now, does it?
I find it interesting dynamic, as you were saying about like the young and old, right? Obviously, when left behind places, it swings right wing because they're older people and young people move out. But the interesting thing here, there is obviously a diversion of a lot of opinions between young and old people, but where we are quite unified is young and old people would say it's a left behind town, there's no investment, there's no jobs. And I think that fundamental core material angle, everyone's unified. The strange thing here, I suppose it's not strange, but the thing that's happened is young people have realized that we've been hollowed out, the economy's been hollowed out, there's no opportunity anymore, and then they leave and go to like I said, cities like Manchester, Bristol, or whatever, and then they move left. And then older people are angry at deindustrialization, are angry at neoliberalism, even though they can't identify it, are angry at the lack of jobs and investment, and then they move to the right, typically because they're captured by immigration. And that is the failure of what the Labour Party did. The Labour Party, in their neoliberal projects, meant that these older people felt let down by the traditional working class of Labour, have moved to the right. That's a big problem for the Labour Party. And of course, young people, I think a lot of it does actually come from culture, but the fact that they are at uni and they're hanging around with more diverse people. I think there's a cultural element that moves people left, but they also happen to agree on left-wing economic policy. So it's like I think there's an agreement there between young and old people, but because older people tend to stay, they're not going to move, are they? They live their entire lives, and young people do. That's where their politics sort of diverges. I think it's very interesting.
And also another point on this one as well. I totally agree, but there's also another point too, which is that there are specific circumstances where people feel aggrieved because things aren't particularly good, but for different reasons that make them go right and left, right? So if you take the kind of the older people who are in these constituencies, a lot of them have pensions, good pensions from when the jobs had good pensions in the 70s and 80s, right? And who are homeowners, whether it be from right to buy or when houses were cheaper. So they have a lot of personal capital, they have a lot of personal wealth they've built up over time, right? They're actually wealthy people compared to younger people who don't have pensions and houses. And again, this comparative is not overall. Obviously, the billionaires are the wealthiest. I'm not saying that they're in that kind of league, but they have a personal nest egg that they want to protect, which obviously lends them more towards conservatism. Despite that personal wealth, their local area, not well funded. Once all of the jobs and young people move away, business rates revenue for the local authority, that falls off a cliff. So they can't actually have the funds available for the kind of investment in these town centres that would make these places nice to live. You look at like Fareham and Waterlooville, it's Suella Braverman, see Anna and Bastani's documentary there for Bastani's Britain, you saw the shop fronts falling apart, the high streets dying. That's a lack of investment from lack of business rates because there are no jobs and no young people. That's a big problem, and that happens all around the area. So they're personally wealthy compared to young people, but the local area gets no funding, and so therefore they want to protect what they've currently got. That's a conservative value, and they also feel like they're being left behind. That's something else. Young people, totally different way around, right? No wealth, no personal pension, no nothing. They don't have anything to protect. All they have is their labour and what they sell and what they, have a third of their paycheck extracted from rent every month or whatever it is, right? They have nothing to protect, so they're happy to throw open to whatever it is, especially for a more left-wing socialist and redistributive policy to be able to make things fairer in terms of wealth distribution. But the local areas that they live, quite nice actually. It's quite nice living in Manchester and London and Bristol and Leeds and Liverpool because these places have lots of businesses. They have lots of footfall. They have lots of consumption. They do have high business rates revenue. Councils don't have as much to spend on adult social care because there's a smaller percentage of the elderly in the constituency. So pretty nice areas to live. So whilst you believe in the strength of funding the community because the community looks nice to you and you build that community, personal wealth to protect, you don't get any of that. So that's why I think there's more communitarian economics out of the dissatisfied youth than there is more individualist economics coming out of the dissatisfied elderly. I don't know if you believe in that hypothesis.
No, I do. I think the more you have to protect, you become more selfish in a way because you feel like you've got something to lose, and in a way like other people are trying to take it away from you. If you have nothing to lose, there's literally, what can you do? And I do think like in that being in that precarious situation and seeing that other people are also in that precarious situation, you do have more communitarian politics. So I fundamentally agree also with that hypothesis.
Yeah. And you see the public realm succeeding, where business rates have lots of revenue and the areas are nice. You can see communitarian projects being a successful thing, right? You look at your council tax money and you will happily pay it because you know that it's going towards something that has provided a nice area to live. If you're living in these rundown areas which have been deindustrialised or been killed by cheap travel overseas, and you see that the council has no money, you resent paying council. What the hell am I paying council tax for? I'm not getting anything in return. And they're right. There's incinerated all on adult social care or on temporary accommodation. You know, these areas are drastically underfunded in terms of local authority budgets and were further defunded under the Cameron Osborne era compared to inner city areas, for example, you know? So you don't believe there's any use in contributing to the community because you don't get anything back from it and you haven't done so. That's why there's a skepticism of communitarian politics as well. So it drives both ways.